Scott, always great to talk to you.
It's good to be with you.
Showdown is set for this week when the full House is supposed to vote on holding the Attorney General in contempt. Some people already calling this Obama's Watergate because he has now inserted himself by calling and invoking executive privilege. But you say a key role in all of this will be determined by the media.
That's right. You know, when we started polling on this topic, and it was before the claims of executive privilege and before the contempt vote in the House committee, we found that there was a huge difference in terms of who's paying attention to this. Conservatives and Republican and constituencies that tend to support their views following the whole story of Fast and Furious a lot more closely than liberals and Democratic groups. And that means it's a question of, will this break through to a larger audience? If it does, could be serious trouble for the president and an Attorney General Holder. If it stays primarily a conservative media issue, then it'll have a different outcome.
But it's interesting because when you look at that and you say a lot of people aren't paying attention to this on a day-to-day basis, but when you look at your numbers about people weighing in on whether Holder should resign, you got both sides saying he should.
Well, sure. 40% overall favor the Attorney General stepping down. 27% are opposed. We got 33% who are undecided. There's other issues out there where people are passionately committed to health care law. For example, 54% favor its repeal. More than 40% are strongly in favor of it. And those numbers haven't budged in years. In fact, they're the exact same as we found right after the law was passed. I suspect the numbers on Holder will change. No cabinet member does terribly well in the court of public opinion. But right now, with 40% calling for his resignation, he's just hoping that it doesn't spread any wider and become a bigger challenge for the administration.
When you look at, though, how the media has been covering this, compared to the days, let's compare it to Watergate. Major difference, isn't there?
Well, there is. It's also, we have to remember, the world is a lot different than in the Watergate era. We didn't have the internet and we didn't have blogs. And by the way, there weren't people out there getting talking points in their emails from the Nixon administration to keep Republicans supportive. Now, I'm not suggesting that would have changed the ultimate outcome, but we do have to recognize the limits of comparisons to earlier times. It's likely that without the online world, without the new media, there would be no discussion of Fast and Furious right now. There would be no discussion of a contempt citation. And so this has brought the issue forward.
Mm-hmm. But then again, you look at the mainstream media, and they haven't been covering this from day one. And it raises suspicions. Was this about shielding and protecting the president, which they're known to do, especially over there at NBC?
And that is, I got to tell you, when I go out and speak, there's nothing I hear about more than the influence of the mainstream media. Most of the people who voiced that concern remember when that media had a huge role. If you went back to the 1940s, they say that Franklin Roosevelt had an audience of 90 million people out of 130 million in the country at that time when he talked about Pearl Harbor and World War II. When Jimmy Carter spoke, we all watched him because every television network showed the president. In today's world, very fragmented audiences, social media has a much bigger impact than NBC, ABC, and CBS. People sending tweets around, sending emails around. And that's the reason we're having this discussion at all.
Mm-hmm. There's a new poll out today by the Associated Press and GFK, and it shows that 25% of the voters remain uncommitted to either Obama or Romney. You have a story like this, Operation Fast and Furious. Put that together, with the economy and the job situation. You see that making a difference come November?
The economy is still the biggest issue, but what you're talking about, if people begin to focus on the Fast and Furious operation and what actually happened, and they believe that the Obama administration is responsible for it and should be held accountable for more than just mistaken judgment, absolutely it can have an impact. That study saying 25% are open to changing their mind is a little overstating it. We find that about 15% are likely to vote for one candidate or the other but could change their mind. And then there's another 8 or 10% who are truly swing voters. Most of those are focusing primarily on the economy. But again, you're talking about a close election. Right now we show Romney up by 2 points. Any of these issues could make a difference.
So if the numbers grow and more people follow it, the bigger problem it is for the president.
That's right. And look, the underlying story, while it's complicated, which is one of the reasons it's difficult for people to grab hold of, but the underlying story of what happened leading to the death of a U.S. officer is a terrible story to have out there for the administration, not something they're going to want to be talking about this fall.
Yeah, and an administration, a press secretary who can't even remember the family's name. They can't ever even remember the name of Brian Terry at the press conference.
Yeah, and that was obviously a bad tactical moment for the Obama team. The larger issue, the realities. So many people want to get caught up in the day-to-day back and forth. The economy is the driving force in this election. Issues like this can have an impact, like Fast and Furious and Attorney General Holder's response and executive privilege. These things can have an impact on the margins, and in a very close election, that could be the difference.
But you sure got a lot of material to take polls on, don't you?
That's right. Well, today the Supreme Court ruled on immigration. Thursday it's health care. We've got the contempt vote coming up in the House. Lots of topics, and I don't think it's going to change between now and November.